motor has to park, right? So it's got a park switch in it, but the park switch does two things. When it's off, it's got a ground on it, and it's got a ground on the park signal right here. Okay, and when the motor runs, then
where does that one go to ground then? Oh, when it's closed.
It's got ground on pin 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the motor's parked,
on that one,
when the motor's parked, it's grounded pin 3 basically.
Yeah.
When the motor runs, when the motor rotates anywhere off of the park position, it's put in pin 3 to pin 4, right? And pin 4 is a feed.
All right.
Okay, so if it's parked and it's got a ground on it, then there's a position on the switch which, when you press it down, it springs back up, so it gives a momentary 12 volts.
Yeah.
Right, and then the motor will park. Okay, and the momentary 12 volts, it runs on a slow speed, and the slow speed's on here, pin 2, right?
Yeah.
Which is pin 9, and you can see. Ignore the fact that it says rear screen wipe wash switch here, and it says front screen windscreen wash wipe switch here, because it's wrong. Okay, because it's the other way around, I think. Yeah.
The one on the left is the front screen.
The one on the left is the rear screen.
Well, why has it got an adjuster for the front screen? Delay.
Well, they've got to be both front screen.
Alright.
Right. This is only the washer here because it goes to the motor there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the washer up here, look, and it comes round to here. So this is definitely the washer circuit. Motor comes through here, through this contact, right? So this position here, you've got the nodes on each switch, the poles, right?
Yeah.
So if you momentarily move this one to the left, right, this goes nowhere, and this goes nowhere, right? That's going to put 12 volts for a moment from pin 6 through this contact to pin 9, which will make the motor run, right? Because you're going to put 12 volts on pin 2,
Yeah.
right? You've got ground on the motor all the time, right? So what that means, that's a little thermal trip thing. Yeah, there's capacitors here and thermal trip. Actually, I don't know what that is. Little filter chokes, isn't it? Yeah, it's to stop interference.
Yeah.
Capacitors on here and chokes on here. Right, so you momentarily put 12 volts on this pin here, which makes the motor run. Okay,
Yeah.
and as the motor runs, the park switch then connects to pin 4 to pin 3. Okay, so you get 12 volts on pin 3. Right, the 12 volts on pin 3 comes along here, comes up to here, comes along here, goes through this normally closed relay contact, which is 87A, right? Yeah. Now, bearing in mind, because you've only momentarily pressed that switch, you're now in the off state on your stalk, right? That will put 12 volts to pin 7. 12 volts from the park switch is now arriving at pin 7, and it goes through the normally closed contact of the switch to pin 9 to pin 2 on the motor, which keeps the motor running.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So the motor runs because of the park switch supply.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when the motor reaches the park position, the park switch gets a ground on it, on the contact, so 5 and 3 joined together, which puts a ground on the white and blue, which puts a ground up to the normally closed contact on the relay, which is 87A, right? Which puts a ground on pin 30, which puts a ground on pin 7, which puts a ground through the contact, which puts a ground on pin 9, which puts a ground on pin 2, which stops the motor dead. So that's how the park system works on the motor.
Right.
Complicated, isn't it?
It is a bit, yeah.
So basically,
They could do it with far less wires.
I know. So there's a mistake here, because this wire here doesn't go to this position. It actually goes to this third node, which is the intermittent position.
Oh, right.
There's a mistake there, right? Because this is normally switched off. Okay, this is the momentary position, momentary, which is where you get 12 volts here. Look, would normally connect to there. This is off. So when you go to intermittent, this puts the fuse supplies this wire, which goes through here, through the middle pole of the switch, right, which puts a feed on pin 10 of the switch, which puts a feed down to the body control module, right? And then the body control module should then earth this wire, which makes this relay come in, right? Now this relay is going to act the same way as the momentary switch in the switch when you did it manually, isn't it? It's going to switch on the feed onto here, switch on the 30 onto 87, which is going to put a feed onto 87, which is on 87 through the relay contact, through to pin 3, through to pin 7, which is when this goes onto intermittent, this one's in this position which goes nowhere, and this one's in this position which joins to the relay. Yeah. So when the body control module grounds the relay, you're going to put a feed on pin 7, which is going to go through the switch contact to pin 9, which is going to make the motor run. Yeah. When the motor runs, then you've got park switch contact no longer on ground. It now goes to the feed, which is supplied by the fuse at the top, which puts a feed round to here onto the body control module, which tells the body control module that the motor's lifted off, right, and then puts a feed. When it now at this point, the relay turns off, which then takes the feed that's coming from the park switch through the normally closed relay contact, through pin 7, and then through the intermittent white position, which is the middle one here, to make it run. Okay, and then when this goes round to ground, then that was the same thing as the park thing again. That will put a ground on here to say that it's to let the computer know that it's parked, which puts a ground on the normally closed contact on 87A, which goes through to pin 30, then through to pin 7 on the switch, and then to the intermittent park position, intermittent wipe contact of the switch to pin 9, and then puts an earth onto the motor to stop it. And then after the duration runs through, the body control module then will trigger the motor again. So I trigger the relay again to make it momentarily work, to do the whole process again and again and again.
All those switches are off at the moment, aren't they?
On the diagram, when I do that, I'm saying that the switch is now in this position.
So the one backward position on that one then, because it's obviously that switch will come back to there.
That's the momentary wipe. That's one wipe. Here there's nothing, and here's nothing. These all move together, all of these three. So if you now go to, that's intermittent covered, right? Slow speed, okay? Slow speed is 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's the fourth node on each one. So there it will go nowhere. This one will join to nothing. But this one will join to this wire here, which is, again, it's the live feed from pin 6. You can see the live feed going everywhere. Look. So the slow speed then connects to the fourth terminal position, which is the third terminal, but there's a -1 position for the momentary, and that will make it run. Put a live feed on pin 9, which will make the motor run, but the motor run will run indefinitely, regardless of what the park switch does, because this position is on, this switch is on this fourth terminal position, which is putting 12 volts all the time on it. So this park switch can do what it likes, but this will always run, which is what I'm getting. Right, and then obviously when you switch it off, then the park switch takes over. The park switch, if it's in part way through the movement, will put a 12 volt supply on the normally closed contact with the relay, which goes through to pin 7, which goes through the normally closed. Normally closed contact of the switch, which puts a feed on the motor, which makes it run until the park switch puts a ground on the pin, ground on pin 3, which then puts a ground on the motor, which makes it go through the through the relay contact, through the switch, puts a ground on the motor to make it stop. And then the fast speed is the central switch here on the diagram, which is this terminal here, which is exactly the same but just a different position. Comes out to pin 8, which goes on to the fast speed of the motor. Once again, it doesn't do anything. The park switch doesn't do anything to the wiper motor operation. It will always work on fast. So yeah, the fact that the intermittent doesn't work must be that the relay is not switching. It must be a faulty wiper motor relay. Wasn't it? The only thing I can't find is that this terminal, which is going live on here, I can't find it arriving on the module. I can't find a live arriving at the module with that position. So, yeah, that's it.